a diet for women in this stage of life that's supposed to be helpful to help with hormone imbalances and things like that. I hate counting macros, so
yeah, I'm not a big fan of that personally. It doesn't, and this is just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I think there are some basic things, and I always equate this back to Kobe Bryant. If you don't know who he is, he's a basketball player. And like he was.
It's about all I know.
Yeah, he was very good, but one of the things that he always focused on was the fundamentals. Okay, so the reason he was so great was because he went and got up at some crazy hour, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and went to the gym and practiced, footwork and dribbling and speed and all these fundamental skills. He didn't go practice, doing, crazy somersault dunking moves. That's not how he became great. And it kind of reminds me of our bodies.
Okay.
It's like you have to do the fundamentals well, and you have to do them well consistently. And you have to do them well, and you have to do them consistently and persistently. And if you don't, all those other fancy tricks.
Yeah. Fads.
Yeah. Pills, potions, lotions, supplements, not that they don't have their place. But if you don't have the fundamentals down, it really is going to be irrelevant, because your machinery is not going to be functioning properly to utilize those other fancy things you're doing to the best of their abilities.
So I find that our bodies in particular and how to make them function well is simple and complex all at the same time.
Yes.
Right? Like the simplicity of like the fundamentals, but it's the complexity of how everything works.
Right. And I was listening to a lecture yesterday morning, and the doctor put up a picture of what it would look like if you like took a snapshot of every biochemical reaction in the body that was happening. And it was so dizzying to look at.
Oh, I'm sure.
So yes, like our bodies are, I just think our bodies are so amazing. Like,
I do too.
Like if you think about it, you go to sleep and your body just like digests your food, remembers to breathe, all of these things that we
dreams.
All these things that we take advantage of, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It does cleaning of the brain, like all these amazing things. But if you to stop and think about and think, okay, I don't sit there. To stay alive, we are automatically breathing and our eyes are blinking and our heart is beating. But what if you had to remember to consciously think about like, oh my God, I got to make my heart beat.
Yeah, you wouldn't live.
Beat. Right. So, or like, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel really well. Oh wait, I forgot to breathe. I think, like all these things, they just happen automatically. And I think we take that for granted because we spend no time having to think about it.
Right.
But all of those things are happening because our cells are functioning properly. And it's when our cells stop functioning properly that we begin to think about those things a little bit more.
It's true. 100%.
So like the pain in our leg, our stomach hurting, like all these, very superficial symptoms of a very complex system that has gone a little wonky. And one of the best things that you can do, obviously, is just give your cells the right inputs so that they can have the right outputs.
Yeah.
And that's a very simple way to put it.
No, that's 100%. So kind of segueing into it, something that I'd like to talk to you about. So in your business, you have the 6 pillars of health. And those are the 6 things primarily that you focus on, you go through with your clients. So talking about, for me, like the 6 pillars of health, I love that, but it's a simple way to help work through something that's super complex, right?
Yeah.
So what are those 6 pillars for you?
So they're nutrition, obviously.
Yeah.
Movement, mindset, sleep, relationships, and toxins.
So what do you spend the most time on?
Oh, that's my husband. Right on.
We can edit this.
Yeah, never mind. I can hang up. Clip. What do I spend the most time on?
What do you start with? How about that? when you're with a new client?
Okay,
what do you start with?
Yes. Well, we always start on nutrition because that's what every client thinks I need to start on.
That's true.
Every time. And honestly, most of them need to start with mindset.
Okay. So what does that look like? So do you go through like a questionnaire, like an intake with them?
Yeah. So when we first start, before I even get started, I do an intake. I ask them lots and lots of questions. And I tell them, like, I'm not trying to interrogate you, but just like be prepared. I'm going to ask you all these questions. And then I sit down and really digest. Then a week later, we come back and I present them with the plan, which is the pillars.
Okay.
And I move, if you think about the pillars, I break each pillar into a certain number of weeks.
Okay.
They're not even.
Okay.
Because some pillars are a little bit easier to understand than others.
Sure.
And some need more attention. But I move them around based on the person. And so, but I also invite them in on the process because it's their health and their goals and where they want to start. So we will typically, for most people, start with nutrition. And then typically that quickly gets shifted to later, and we bring in the mindset.
Really?
part. Yeah. Almost every time.
Really?
Yeah. Because mindset is so huge. And that's really what I've discovered in this whole process, healing myself and really trying to help other people, is that you can go through all the motions of eating, moving your body, and sleeping. But if you don't have a fundamental mindset shift on how you see yourself and how you view the significance of your mindset, you won't really change, because our change really begins with how we think and how we see the world. Yeah. Right. And I think you can relate to that as a mother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like how we think and how we see the world completely changes when you have a child. It wasn't the act of giving birth or growing the baby. It was like you just fundamentally see everything different.
I listened to not to interrupt, but I listened to someone. She I think she's like a life coach anyway, but it's all about like midlife stuff. And then she went through like this model of how she talks to her clients about how like the facts don't cause the feelings. No. It's the facts cause your thoughts, which is what causes your feelings. And I just think that's so important when you deal with like certain things that like, like we're sitting here at a podcast. That's like a fact, right? How we interpret, what we think about that is very different. And then it influences the feelings. Right. So I just found that so helpful. And it wasn't like a mind-blowing revelation, but for me, it was just well thought out of really be mindful of.
And how she said it, it probably just like it hit you in a way that somebody else probably said it that didn't hit you.
Right. I just think that's so important to think that the facts are facts. They don't cause the feelings.
Right. And a lot of people come to me and they know, okay, well, yes, I know I should be eating healthy. And I unpack.
But what is that?
Right.
Right.
I truly unpack what that means.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I know I need to be moving my body. Okay, well, let's really unpack what that means.
Sure.
And what that looks like for you at this particular time in your life that's realistic, that you can continue on doing consistently.
Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it.
Right. And
partly.
If you can't do it consistently, then you're not going to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And especially in this 40s, 50s time, like it's going to look and feel different.
Yeah.
What your body responds to is going to look and feel different. And that's the other thing that it reminds me of a car. When you get a new car, you're not going to treat that car the same way. You might be a little more aggressive with it, hit that accelerator a little harder. But if your car is 30 years old, and you're like, please, I just want the door to stay on when I open it. Right?
It needs to last one more year.
Right. You're going to be a lot more gentle.
Yeah.
You're not going to slam on the brakes. You're not going to just hit the accelerator with a lead foot. You're really going to really take care of it, because it's still a car and it still gets you where you need to go, and it's still serving its purpose in a very meaningful way to you. But you can't treat it like you did before.
Yeah.
And not to make us feel like our doors were falling off or something. But it just like that, you can't expect that something that's 40, 50, 60, 30 years old, you can treat and do the same thing with and get the same result as you did when you were 20.
Yeah.
It's just not like, that's not realistic.
Right.
And so, you can't do it.
Yeah. So what are some things, like, how do you start with mindset? Like, what does that even look like?
Health, kind of developing a health consciousness. Like, how do you feel about your health?
Okay.
What do you believe about your health?
Okay.
Do you believe that you can get healthy? Do you really believe? Or do you really think, okay, yeah, I'm just going to try this diet again. It's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I know it's going to happen. Are you saying it, but you don't believe it?
Sure.
So we kind of unpack some of that. I really spend a lot of time talking about the impact of stress. Stress is really, really, really important to deal with and manage and mitigate to the best of your abilities. And you can't get away from it because this is our society.
You have to learn how to manage it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to be intentional with it because stress will raise some stress hormones, which will cause some biochemical reactions in your body and can raise your insulin. Insulin is your fat storage hormone. So if you're not managing that in your life to some extent, it can inhibit your ability to reach your health goals, whether that's weight or sleep or whatever.
Yeah.
So stress, and then giving people actually some real block and tackling. Like, what can I actually do in my real life?
Yeah.
Not in my Zen life, when I got all this free time.
Yeah.
But your real life. Like, what can you really do to solve those problems or to mitigate some of those things?
It's so good because I feel like so much of like literature and stuff like that, it's like out there, like in like La La Land or whatever, but it's functional day to day. What does that look like?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's sort of one of the other big things that goes into mindset, which doesn't seem like it is, but I fold it in there because I think it's really important, is meal planning.
Okay.
And everybody's like, oh, meal planning. I know I'm supposed to plan my meals. And I'm like, no. That's not meal planning. That's like, idealized. I'm going to cook all these meals every single night. Like, that's not real. Like, you got to sit down and look at your real calendar with your real life and your real kid schedule and go, what is practical that I can actually do?
Sure.
That's meal planning. Meal planning is not, oh, I'm supposed to have like this many of this and this many of this and this many of this at this meal. And then like, that's not real.
Right.
And maybe that's realistic for a short period of time to meet a very short-term goal, but that's not long-term. Like, nobody can do that.
That's not living real life. That's living in a very self-isolating, boxed in scenario that's not real or sustainable.
Right. Like, what can you cook that can help you reach your health goals and objectives that can also meet your family's needs?
Right.
And Tuesday night we have karate, and then Wednesday night we have art, and then Thursday night we got dance, and then Friday we got chess, and then I'm going over to my friend's house for that's real life.
That's real.
So you got to plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to do that so that you can concurrently and in tandem reach your health goals and feel good while still living your real life.
Right.
And it is possible. It just takes some intentionality and some front loading of new habits. And that's where the mindset part comes in. It's like, okay, we have to like set aside time because that is important. And you have to have that mindset shift about doing those things.
Yeah.
And once you do something, okay, the first time somebody does that, it's hard. It's cumbersome. It feels awkward.
Yeah.
Like roller skating for the first time or roller skating for the first time in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. You're clumsy. You're awkward. But once you do it, it just becomes a habit and you do it and it feels comfortable. And I think it's just getting people over that initial hump. Or there's the whole conscious competence paradigm pendulum where people are unconsciously incompetent, so they don't know what they don't know. And then they become consciously incompetent. And then they become consciously competent. And then you become unconsciously competent. And my goal is, in all of these pillars, is to...
Such a fascinating way to think about the process. But yeah.
My goal is just, wherever you start in that space and whatever pillar it is to just get you to unconscious competence.
Okay.
So that you're just doing something that's good for you and good for your family and your body and your life, just because that's what you do.
Yeah.
You don't think about it. You're just like, well, no, I just exercise.
It's part of the fabric of your life,
you
family.
just consciously eat that way, or you unconsciously eat that way. You just do it. Like it doesn't occur to you, oh, I should probably eat some vegetables today.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Yeah.
Like it would be weird not to do it.
Yeah.
And so, it's a slow process.
It is a slow, and I think, we live in a culture that doesn't like slow or delayed gratification or all of those things that real change requires, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'm part of it, right?
Like, we all get sucked into that.
Of course.
I have been working out for like 10 minutes and my buns feel nothing like steel.
Or it's like that reel. Have you ever seen that reel where a dog is like pounding on the scale and the thing is like, I've been working out for a week and the scale hasn't moved or whatever. It's like, it's supposed to be silly, but like, that's how we functionally live.
Yes.
But yeah, so.
Oh, and weight. I could go on and on about weight.
Weight's hard. Weight is so complicated and hard. And it's always been part of like the narrative of my life too, but like, I feel like some healthcare providers, since it's like the first thing they have you do when you come into like, and even like a random visit, like having nothing to do with it's the first thing they want you to do.
Reflux. How much do you weigh?
So I mean, whatever. Like
my toe hurts.
Yeah. Yes. You go to an orthopedic doctor for like, whatever. So it's neither here nor there.
Your weight will explain your acid reflux
right.
and your toe pain.
So part of that, it's fueled by like, the first thing you do is the healthcare provider wants to know how much so it's just so hard to get away from the number.
And I think for me, one thing that was really helpful learning about weight is it's such a hard topic for women.
It is.
Because, and I have a lot of sensitivity and compassion for this because it's emotionally charged.
Yep.
But, it's not everything.
Yeah.
But it's also not nothing either.
Sure.
It's finding that threading that needle of, okay, we need to talk about weight because we need to make sure that your weight isn't taxing on your body in an unhealthy way, but like it's also not everything either. And so many things affect your weight.
Yeah.
So people don't realize this.
Yeah.
But your hormones, if you slept, your level of hydration, your workouts, your salt intake, like so many things can affect your weight that has nothing to do with your actual weight. And it's such a superficial metric of your health.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean to say that, it isn't a metric.
Of course.
It's just not the metric.
Right.
And most people put it as it's the metric.
Yeah.
If I am at this weight, then I will
be healthy
or I'll feel good.
Yeah.
And I fell into that trap.
Yeah.
Myself more than once.
Yeah.
And I would get to the weight but I still wouldn't look the way I wanted.
Yeah.
Because that weight didn't equal a look. It just equaled gravitational pull.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all it meant. But it didn't mean that like I was going to have more muscle and be more toned or change my body composition or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So mindset's the first thing typically that you focus on. So what's typically the high number 2?
Nutrition.
Nutrition. Okay.
Because it is so important.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that it's number 2 because it's number 2.
Right.
They're all important.
Yeah.
You have like
and you'll focus on all of them. But
yes. Yeah. You have a 6-legged thing and every single leg is bearing weight. Its job is just a little different.
Yeah.
But nutrition is really important because I hate to say this cliche because it seems so overused, but it is true. You are what you eat.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because people often think about their children growing, right? So we want to give them good nutrition because their brains are building and their organs are expanding and their bodies and their bones and, you know, all the things that we want our little babies to like be perfect and healthy. But we as adults hit a period of time where we stop growing. You know, we go through the puberty and then, okay, you're the height you're going to be. But what you don't realize is your body is turning over too. Your liver is turning over. Your gut lining is turning over. Your heart turns over. So you're not actually the same.
Wow. Okay.
And this happens, your skin turns over.
Yeah.
Like everything is turning over. It's just happening at a different rate because it would not be in our best interest if it all turned over at the same time. So another amazing thing, right? It's all doing it at a different time.
Yeah.
But where is that raw material coming from to turn over our liver and all of these important organs? It comes from what you eat.
Yeah.
And so the quality of what you put in your body and the things that you eat is what your body is using to remake itself at different times and in different phases your whole life. So really,
that's such a good way to think about it, though. Yeah. Of that, it's a helpful way to think about how nutrition really is that important.
Yeah,
and what it's actually doing.
Right, and we have a real understanding of that for our children, right? Because
we
physically see them growing.
Yeah,
and so it makes sense. Oh my gosh, like I want my kid to eat a nutritious, balanced diet because like they're growing.
Yeah. Their brain's growing, everything's growing, yeah.
But we're not growing, we're just turning over.
Yeah. And which is in itself regrowing, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not getting bigger, hopefully. Or maybe you do want to maybe you want your muscles to get bigger,
sure,
in which case you are growing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's a very complex, intricate system, you know, where you have your hormones and your postal system communicating with each other. And there's all these like just millions and millions of biochemical reactions happening all at the same time. But we don't have to worry about that if we just do the basics. And that's why I hit nutrition second, because it's just so important to support your body.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then like something very important for women at this stage of our lives, and this is like really monitoring our carbohydrate intake and finding that right balance for your body. Some people need really low carbohydrate and that's what works for them, and some people need higher, and it just like it depends.
Yeah.
Who was it? Well, how much of this? And I'm like, sorry, I can't give you that answer.
Yeah, and I'm sure they don't like that. I'm sure your clients don't like that at all. They want to be told exactly what to do and how to do it.
Right.
Which I get.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it was that simple, all the weight loss companies would be out of business.
Yeah, the multi-billion-dollar industry would be out of business.
We are not calculators.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
There's a really fascinating book by Gary Taubes called Why We Get Fat. Highly encourage everybody to read it. He kind of unpacks a lot of this. It's a really, and it isn't telling you, I mean, it does, but it's really a historical book on why we are where we are and where all of that came from.
Nutrition wise.
Yeah. And just the philosophy of it's all calories in, calories
out. Oh yeah.
It really goes a deep dive into that, but I really like that book a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what's the third thing that you typically... Movement.
So
okay.
Movement's super important.
Okay.
Muscle is super important. You know, it's basically an organ. It doesn't really get a lot of respect, but it can really help metabolism. So having good quality, strong, healthy muscles is important. And once you hit that perimenopausal, menopause day, postmenopausal, consistency and persistency becomes super important with strength training, because even a few days off, you can have regression.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and anyone who has ever done any kind of strength training program can attest to that.
Yeah. It can really have a lot of effects metabolic. You can go backwards quite a bit by just being inconsistent.
Yeah.
So and the other thing I like to tell people is like, you have to find your minimum effective dose.
So what's like a minimum amount of, do you give any kind of like metrics of at least 2 times a week or 3, or do you not do that?
My understanding from the, fitness professionals
Sure.
is what they recommend is, because I'm not a trainer.
Right. Yeah.
Right? That's
sure.
not my area of expertise, but I have them in my life to go to.
Of course.
Is 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay. That's
Right. But everybody's going to be different.
Right.
Again, sorry.
No. Yeah.
But
at least you have a place to start.
Right. Like 2 to 3 times a week, and very consistent.
Okay.
And, some people might need to do more. Some people might have to start off less because physically they're not in the place where
Capable,
they can do
sure.
more, but they slowly build up.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
also progressively loading, meaning you are adding more weight slowly over time under the guidance of a trained professional.
Yeah.
As to not injure yourself. Please don't be like going around throwing 50-pound weights around. Okay. That would not be a good idea. But so that you have proper form and you're doing it the right way, to help your body build muscle.
Sure.
And then of course, front loading that is the nutrition component, which is critical for that. So we have a nutrition movement mindset. Sleep is huge.
Yeah.
Sleep is hard in every phase of life after you have a child.
It is. For different reasons.
Right. And so just talking about the hacking some of it, cold bedroom, darkness. If you can't get your room blacked out, get an eye mask. There's like really inexpensive ones on Amazon. Making sure you're not eating right before bed, because that can actually raise your insulin, which will screw up your sleep. Stress management, because again, stress screws you up.
Yeah.
So nutrition, movement, mindset, sleep, relationships, super important.
Yeah.
Having connected relationships. There was a longevity study, the longest one ever done, and it showed that the biggest indicator for happiness amongst all those was the quality of relationships.
I love that.
Yeah. So close relationships, and you don't have to have, you don't have to be friends with everybody, but just like some people you can go to.
100%.
And then last is toxins.
Okay.
So toxins
in the environment, in products, in clothes, in all the things.
And it gets very overwhelming.
Sure.
That is probably the most overwhelming one that I talk to for people, second to nutrition, because there's like a lot to go into it, both of them. But toxins, especially for women, because our hormones just make us more susceptible to absorbing toxins.
Okay.
And there's a lot of hormone mimicking chemicals out there that can disrupt that system and mimic our actual hormones and then wreak havoc in there.
Okay.
And so, I always recommend just starting with the basics.
Sure.
Do one thing at a time and slowly.
Otherwise it would be so overwhelming and probably costly if you're switching over everything or whatever.
Yeah, so you just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
When you go to the store, you buy this one that's cleaner than that one. And how do you know, right? So how do I know? I have an app called, it's an environmental working group app.
Okay.
And I just look up, hey, I need more wipes. And it'll tell me which ones are the cleanest. And if that's not available at the store I shop at, which is typically Publix, then I just get the best one I can get.
Right.
And it's just simple stuff like that.
Doing the best you can. So I like that, because I think just talking about all the 6 pillars in general, it can be incredibly overwhelming. Yep. And I'm not saying, like most people aren't starting from scratch when we talk about that kind of thing, right?
No.
But it's to start small, do one thing, and then that's
that's really why I have the pillars. And I've, we go through it over many weeks.
Yeah.
It's because if you go in and try to do it all at once, you're not going to do it.
No.
Or maybe you are the one outlier amongst the standard deviations. You're way out there.
Sure.
Then you'll actually do that.
Yeah.
There's that one person who would.
Sure.
So if I am insulting you, then
I'm sorry. But the thing is, that person probably isn't struggling anyway.
No. No. Like, I already do all that.
Exactly.
Gold star. all the gold stars, 5-star review. But yeah, that's the intention behind the coaching.
Awesome.
Is because it's slow, it's methodical, it's one thing at a time. And, there's some science.
Personal. It's personal.
It's very personal.
Yeah, I like that.
And there's some, it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
There's no two.
Of course.
I heard somebody say once, and I would love to give credit to the person, but I don't remember who it was. That's probably mom brain. But they said, if you've met one person who a diet has worked for, you've met one person who that diet's worked for.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's tailored, it's individualized, and it's slow.
Yeah.
For the purpose and intent of knowing that habit change is slow.
Yeah.
And like you said, people want it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I oftentimes will have discovery calls and I'll like, listen, if you're looking to lose, 30 pounds in 12 weeks, I'm not your girl.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to have those conversations up front.
Yeah.
For you and for the person, right?
Right.
Expectations need to be clear.
Yeah. And you don't want somebody to come to something and not get the outcome that they were looking for.
Yeah.
I'm really more about how do I change your life 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Then how do I get you in that bathing suit?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, because, speaking primarily of women in the second act of their life, it's about how do I maximize living for another 40, 50 years, however long, right?
Right.
So it's in the long term that you're thinking and planning and working with your clients like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could be talking to you forever.
I know.
Maybe you should just come back on and we can talk about something else. Okay.
What could we talk about?
But thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you. And this will probably be a part 1 and part 2. So I'm excited about that.
Or part 3.
Or part 3. But thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh no, I'm honored to be here and so happy that you asked me. So thank you.